I got involved with this project after I had a very lengthy dinner with Rob and Jeffrey, the directors. And I saw they had a massive book of material, like just so much research on Linda and so many photographs. And they just had a perfect vision. They wanted to tell it from her point of view, which I loved. It doesn't matter if Rob's behind the camera and Jeffrey's at the monitor or vice versa. You're getting the same thing. I mean, as a whole people, they're amazing and they're different. But as directors, like, it's like whoever's there, I'll be like, oh, I have a question. I never feel like I'm not getting the right answer. I'm not getting what Jeffrey would want Rob to say. Like, they're completely in sync. I've never had so much fun filming before, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we were back in the 70s for a couple months. The approach was more just getting the essence, because really that's just the most important thing. And if you don't have the essence, then you have nothing. Even if you have the color, the hair color and the eye color, and the lipstick and the freckles, like, it's not going to do you any good if you're not her. It was important for me to validate everything that she went through, because it's told from her point of view. I mean, I just want to give her justice. Like, I'd want to make her happy, and obviously she's passed away, but the support of her family is really important, and we have that support, and it means the world. We added a little drama just to get the point across, I think, which is what we always do. But this is definitely not a fictional tale at all. It's just completely real-life telling of someone's experience. I learned that Linda was so unbelievably patient and understanding of people's judgments, and really just, God, she was just kind of stoic in a way, which is so hard to understand when you're watching people just throw stuff at it, like just completely throw her under the bus and insult her and question every move she makes and everything she says. It's so frustrating, but she comes out of it with so much understanding for these people and so much love, and it's amazing. I mean, what amazes me about her also is that she always wanted the white picket fence and children and a happy marriage. That's all she was ever after.
You know, at first I thought this is just no way I could do something like this. You know, a story of this kind, play a character like this when my wife was 6.5 months pregnant. But then she told me she thought that it'd be kind of a nice thing for me to do. You know, kind of, there's a kind of cathartic feeling about going through something like this. You know, some of the time we were shooting 2 cameras in this movie. We're shooting Super 16. Everything's very movable, everything's very light. Being able to do cross coverage like that makes it so that we can have moments that are unscripted come to life, and we've had a fair amount of that, which I think has been good. I mean, this story is so completely, I think, told through Linda's point of view. And it is Linda's story that we're dealing with. This is not the Chuck Trainer story. So, you know, in some ways, I'm very aware, at least, maybe not everyone is, that I'm not really playing Chuck Trainer. And I didn't spend a lot of time dealing with him. You know, I dealt with the script, my own imagination. I think because I was aware from the get-go that the point of view on the story was from Linda, that maybe it's because I'm Chuck, but I didn't necessarily buy everything that she said about what happened. Not because she's a liar, but because I just don't believe that people remember things. It's difficult to see on the page what Chuck is getting from this woman besides sex, and who cares about that. But like, what happened in this movie that didn't happen in the script was, I think she's kind of inspiring in her enthusiasm, you know? I think that they are both deeply naive in the movie. You know, I guess I might be a bully in some ways, but I think everyone in this movie, the 15-year-old version of them, the 14-year-old version of them is very clear. When I see Hank Azaria in the movie, I see like a little boy. I see Bobby, I see a little boy. I see Chris, I see a little boy. You know, I see Linda, she's a little girl. Chuck is a little boy. We're all just like kids. And it was a kind of more innocent time, I think, you know. You know, maybe not as innocent as like the 50s or something, but like it feels like there's a real innocence to me.
I literally couldn't stop reading. You know, it was such a page turner for me. It was something I was so taken aback by because I didn't know about Linda Lovelace. Growing up in England in the 90s, Linda Lovelace was not a part of my upbringing, and it was just such a fascinating story to me, and I thought all the characters were so juicy. You know, everyone has their own little mini, I guess, world going on within this bigger world of Linda and Chuck, and I thought the writing was so beautiful. And then I met the directors and I went and we sat and we had tea and we discussed Patsy, and it was just a cool discussion of this kind of young liberal girl who's growing up in Florida but is kind of bigger than that, and then she has this best friend who takes off into this world that she's so not a part of. And ultimately what I love too is the circle that my character makes. You know, she starts off in that young world, they're in it together, and then Linda just goes off on this crazy, crazy detour. and Patsy goes on her detour, and then they come back around in a full circle, and I love that. It was so thrilling. I loved working with her so much. There's so much electricity going on in that young woman. It's like so much going on behind her eyes that she's not saying. And I think she's so warm, she was so welcoming that it was very easy to play best friends, you know? And then just this arc that she goes on from the scenes at the very beginning where we're having a laugh and we're giggling and we're, you know, fucking around or whatever, and then to the end where she's so fragile and so broken, and I think Amanda's going to be so brilliant in this film.
The directors are such spectacular pair of fellows, so bright and so thoughtful and so talented, and have done such wonderful things with that talent and with that intelligence that I really wanted to work with them. You know, they have a kind of, they each know what their strengths are, and they each kind of know, when they work with the different ones of us, they each sort of know who goes best with whom and when and where and why. And there's no egocentricity about, well, I should, They just flow into where they should be at any given time. It's extraordinary. They're extraordinary. It's a wonderful, it's wonderful, really. It's just terrific. This cycle that happens in this family is metaphorical in that it happens in many families in many different ways. And to have the privilege of being able to play a character that is herself broken by the things that happen to her and the things that are happening in her era and time, who isn't really necessarily a bad person, but just hurt and not really educated, and it wasn't really a time when people, you know, were evolved or enlightened or illuminated, and let's face it, so many people still aren't. And I think it's wonderful to put to film things that may just in their presence allow people to see themselves better. They have a lot of similarities, and those similarities make them at odds with each other. And I think, you know, the mother wants the best for her but doesn't know how to get it for her because she didn't have it. There's just this magical thing when it's a real character that starts to occur that's hard to explain. where you do it and then you look at the monitor and then there's this other element that just seems to happen. There's kind of this grace that's very special when you play someone real.
I read it and I was really taken by the script. It's such a wonderfully well-written script, and jumped right in. I mean, as a matter of it literally happened like that. I mean, I literally looked at the scenes and went, yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to do this? It's a wonderful character, and the whole what if this, you know, this really happened to you, how would you react to it? And it's certainly something that, you know, is probably a fear for every red-blooded American dad out there, you know what I mean? Story-wise, I worked out perfectly because I would have been the same age. And I remember all the hysteria or the excitement about this Deep Throat when it came out. I was going into adolescence. I guess I maybe was in there a little bit further, so certainly something that sort of popped into my radar. But I had never really, which is something that I think is going to be great for the legacy of Linda Lovelace, is to be able to get into the family and the little girl and the story of what happened to her. Because in our society, I think that you can just start to look at women as objects, and certainly in the world of pornography. And you know, it's good to have a conscience about and be aware that, you know, it's all fun and games, but that really is somebody's little girl, and they've got a story. And I think this movie will really put that human element in there for this lady, and it's really great to be a part of it. And talking to Rob and Jeff, we decided that there had to be something about where Linda got her positive outlook on life. She always seemed to be smiling and seemed to be happy and seemed to be, you know, optimistic, I guess. And where did she get that? And was it from Dorothy, her mother, or was it from the father? And we kind of decided that it might have been a little bit more from the father. I got a lot from both of them. It was interesting to see, you know, you would say something and who would react, but it was literally like kind of talking to one person with two different points of view, but very similar. They complement each other well. They didn't realize how close to this guy I really am, because I am a churchgoer. I do believe in God. I do go, and there are things that I listen to when I go to church, and I'm aware of, you know, the values and the morals, and I have a little girl, and you know, I want her to have a good life, and I'm not necessarily, you know, thrilled with the idea of, you know, something happening in my life very similar to what happened to Linda's dad. So to approach it from that point of view, I really identified with this guy, and plus the fact that all the roles I played a lot of military guys, so I can understand what he was like as a World War II vet, and he was a cop in New York, and I understand what that was like, and so I can bring all that element, all those elements to John, and hopefully give him you know, a pretty honest portrayal.
Thematically, what the film is about is a young woman having to find her power. I think that's what we've come to discover that the film is about. And how she gets there is long and painful and circuitous.
Linda's different tellings of her own life and her own story were essential to our conception of the film. Her earliest autobiography was apparently written by Chuck Traynor, as far as we can tell.
When we first delved into the subject, Linda was an enigma to us. We really couldn't we couldn't jive all the different parts of her story as she told it. And when you look at even some of the evidence, like the photographic evidence, you see her during the time of Deep Throat when she's presenting herself in publicity stills and publicly. She really looks great, like she's having the time of her life and coming into herself. And then you come to discover that was what was really going on behind the scenes was a very different story.
Each development, each change in her life was really driven by intolerable circumstances in the previous phase. So she came from a very strict family, very oppressive, protective parents, her mother especially. And when she met Chuck and discovered her a kind of freedom in her sexuality, that was a liberation for her from her strict religious upbringing.
As part of our research, we had a conversation with Gloria Steinem, who first encountered Linda watching the Donahue show, when Linda appeared on the Donahue show. And she was very impressed and arranged for a meeting. And Gloria, we spoke with Gloria for maybe, 45 minutes to an hour in that first phone call, and something that she told us, which was really key in how we approached Linda as a character, was her sense of Linda, which was that she was extremely generous and kind and patient. And in particular, Gloria cited how time and again Linda would encounter doubters, people who read her book or just refused to believe that what she was saying was so, and really questioned why didn't she leave earlier than she did, and just really doubting what Linda was presenting as her truth.
Seeing Linda on Donahue was really what made us realize that she was a kind of a deep character that would give us room to work. There's a way in which she expresses herself that's just so real that you can't. It's really hard to. It's hard to doubt what she's saying. And I don't think it's because she's a great actress. I think it's because she was just speaking from her heart.
I think this was an incredibly challenging role for Amanda, but she also brought qualities innately of her own qualities to the role that were very much like Linda's. I mean, Amanda has a kind of just a guilelessness and a genuineness and an authenticity, which was very much like Linda. So in that sense, Amanda was bringing a lot of herself to the part. And Linda was also completely unaffected. I mean, she had been through this incredible ordeal, but just as a person, she didn't present herself in any way with any kind of affect, similarly with Amanda.
She studied the Donahue show. She looked at the tapes, and she internalized and embodied what was going on, what seemed to be going on for Linda, in a very convincing, compelling manner.
It's a trade-off. We're just bouncing back between one of us being on the floor with the actors and the other a monitor, and then we'll come forward and then switch.
Sometimes one of us goes with one of the actors and one of us goes with the other actor. It's really getting what we need, and we both know what we need to get. So we just do whatever we can think of to get it.
We use similar principles in documentary and feature filmmaking, which is trying to find what's the emotional truth. What's the emotional truth to that character, to that situation, to that overall story. And within that, we take a lot of dramatic liberty, but our guide is what our sense of that emotional truth is.
audiences are going to respond, I believe, to Amanda and Peter's performances, all the performances, but especially Amanda and Peter, who are really on fire, and both give really, really powerful performances, and I think that's what audiences respond to.
They're both so mild-mannered and soft-spoken that they don't even register as more than one. I mean, you know, they're really still, it's not like you've got this two-headed monster, you know, quite the opposite. And I just found, I think they were great. I mean, good direction, enough, not too much, you know, nice amount. And, you know, it's an independent film, or kind of, low budget, so we're moving at a brisk pace, but I still feel like we're stopping to get all the necessary, it's not a student film, you know, we're getting all the necessary takes and coverage. And I just find them, I don't know them that well, but I find them trustworthy, and I think that must come from the very unexploitative documentaries they've done. I read his biography from the 70s. I read some really in-depth interviews from the mid-2000s when he, when the documentary came out, and I grew to have an affection for him. I never met him, but I actually genuinely, he seems like quite a good guy.
And once I got hold of the material and saw the documentary about when it takes place, it's just such a very rich time. That period, the 70s, which is really going back in time now. But I remember the event as a kid, and I remember the news coverage on it, and I remember that it was a big deal what was happening and what that movie meant to society and what she did. And she's a very interesting mystery, and the surrounding characters, it's so steeped in that time, you know, which I find interesting. You can really feel what made the 70s a sort of unique decade, or a part of it, you know, different than where we're at now. I think there's an affection, which I like. You know, you wouldn't expect a mobbed up guy who puts the money into the film and really cares about the profit only. But he's also a guy that's not really familiar with porn, so when he's on the set, you know, at least as I play it, he's kind of excited and titillated by it. And I think that there's something about her. I think he, you know, maybe even a little bit in love with her inside. They're very supportive and very kind of in an interesting dynamic. I've never been directed by a team, but they kind of work as one. Even when, you know, when they both come on, they're very specific and totally non-interfering.
You know, I was familiar with the movie. Sometime in my 20s, I saw it because I wanted to see what the big deal was. And you know, like, it's still shocking, even though there's all kinds of that act in porn nowadays. It's still kind of shocking to see, and so her name, of course, is like in the cultural lexicon of people of a certain generation. And I'd heard that there was maybe going to be a movie about her, and then when I got the call, I just thought, oh, cool, that's funny. I feel like I know way too much about this. So I'm the right person for it. I refreshed myself. I saw the movie again, and then I tried to look up as much stuff as I could on the character I play, Butchie Pareto, of which there wasn't that much, but that was good for me, actually, because I just thought, well, I'm going to give him, you know, what I want to bring to it, and let the script sort of indicate which way I'll go. And that's one of the things that I liked about the character was, you know, yeah, right, he represents a certain element. It's not a secret, right, that the guys who put up the money for the movie were connected in New York. But what I liked about the script, with this character in particular, was that, you know, he recognizes an opportunity, he exploits that opportunity, and in the process of making the movie, he actually believes that they're making a good movie, and he becomes somewhat of an artist. At least that's the way I chose to go with it. Aside from the subject matter, which I was interested in, and the role, which I was interested in, that was a big, huge selling point in having me and deciding to do this film, was the actors I was going to get to work with. Some who I've known socially, but I've never gotten to work with, like Peter and Chris, Hank, all guys I've wanted to work with. Hank, I really wanted to work with Hank. I'm a huge fan of his, and Peter as well. And Amanda I'd never met, and she's fantastic. And I have to say that the funnest time I've had on this is when the cameras are rolling. You know, it's just, they're good actors. You know, doing a scene with Peter, Hank, and Amanda in the office is my favorite day, because it really felt like we were making something, like we were really in that scene. I think Deep Throat did represent a sort of a big symbol of the sexual revolution. But I think it also represented something that we go through a lot today, which is, you know, the first time anybody, when the producers of the movie first see that little loop that they make, there's a tendency even now today to exploit the hell out of it for all it's worth. And sometimes those things, whether it be viral or a reality television show, sometimes they blow up so big. And that really, that's not something that's 21st century driven. That's something that I think collectively it's been in the conscience. Something that we see we've never seen before. We want everybody to see it. And that was just one of those things that was like kismet, that happened sort of at the right time, right? You know, the end of the 60s and the beginning of the sexual revolution, you know, certainly in the early 70s.